but are they actually going to try to deter these players from committing flagrant fouls? Or is the fine going to be just a slap on the wrist? Well, the verdict is in, and the fine, the punishment, all that it's going to be is just a slap on the wrist. With a new CBA deal, these players are making much.
What the most dangerous thing that ever happened to the WNBA wasn't a bad season, a failed TV deal, or a franchise collapse. What if it was one rookie, one player so electric, so undeniable, so absolutely impossible to ignore, that her very presence forced an entire professional league to look in the mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. The WNBA has existed for nearly 3 decades. Legends walk those courts. Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Cheryl Swoops, Lisa Leslie, players who gave everything to build something real. And then Caitlin Clark showed up, and everything changed overnight. Not because those legends didn't matter, but because the moment Clark stepped into her first professional arena, sold out electric, cameras everywhere, the entire sports world suddenly had its eyes locked on women's basketball in a way that hadn't happened before. Not like this. Not at this scale. TV ratings that shattered records. Arenas that hadn't sold out in years. Suddenly gone within minutes of Clark's Road schedule dropping. Sponsors flooding in. ESPN leading SportsCenter with WNBA highlights. The Indiana Fever, a franchise that had quietly struggled for years, transformed almost overnight into must-watch television. And somewhere in the middle of all that transformation, something ugly started happening on the court. It started with contact. Physical, deliberate, hard contact. The kind that doesn't look accidental when you watch it twice. Fans notice first. A hard foul here. An elbow there. A shove after the whistle. A screen set just a little too aggressively. A play that lingered a half-second too long after the ball was gone. Clip after clip started going viral. And with every clip, the outrage grew louder. Shindy Carter. The hip check that sent Clark to the floor with no call. No flagrant. Nothing. Social media erupted. Sports talk radio erupted. Even NFL and NBA fans who barely follow the WNBA suddenly had an opinion. Dejanai Carrington. A hand directly to Clark's face during a play. Flagrant one called.
$4,000 for the second one, and up to $10,000 if you're a repeat offender. Let's take a look. Front office sports, finally making themselves useful. As soon as Annie Constable left front office sports, and I know we give Annie a lot of ish around here from time to time, but as soon as Annie Constable left front office sports, they've been dead to us. they haven't really been that useful. But finally, Colin Salau, salute Colin, salute, finally doing something for us. WNBA slightly raises the technical flagrant foul fines for the 2026 season. Players will be fined $1,200 for their first 3 technicals, up from $200 from last year. WNBA players have welcomed an unprecedented salary increase this year under the new CBA, but the additional income will also come with an increase in fines. The league has revised its fine structure for technical fouls, flagrant fouls, and flopping ahead of the 2026 season. Okay, we're touching on flopping too. Paige Beckers, flopping, Paige Beckers, flopping, Paige, flop.
But fans called a foul that deserved far more. Angel Reese, the ongoing tension, the trash talk, the intentional hard contact that turned every Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever game into must-watch television for reasons that had nothing to do with basketball strategy. And every single time the dust settled, the punishments felt light. Fines that players making new CBA money could laugh off. Suspensions that never came. A league that seemed to respond to each incident with carefully worded statements and not much else. Fans weren't just frustrated. They were furious. Because here's what made it worse. Caitlin Clark never stopped playing. She didn't demand protection. She didn't cry to the media after every hard foul. She got up, dusted herself off, and kept going, which somehow made the league's silence louder. If Clark herself wasn't backing down, why was the WNBA, the narrative started shifting in dangerous territory for the league. Sports media began asking uncomfortable questions. Were certain players targeting Clark specifically because of her fame? Because of her fan base? Because of resentment over the attention she brought? Or was this just basketball, physical, competitive, fierce? The answer, depending on who you asked, was somewhere in between. And that made everything even more complicated. Then something changed. Quietly at first. Almost invisible if you weren't paying attention. Reports started surfacing, not fully confirmed, but spreading fast, that the WNBA was preparing to revise its fine structure ahead of the 2026 season. Technical fouls, flagrant fouls, repeat offenders. The league, according to growing online discussion, was finally acknowledging that the current system wasn't working. Social media didn't wait for official confirmation. It exploded immediately. Now they're scared. That was the energy everywhere. And the timing felt impossible to ignore, because right as these reports spread, Caitlin Clark's star wasn't dimming. It was burning brighter than ever. And the WNBA had a choice to make. But here's what nobody saw coming next. Because the fine structure wasn't the real story. The real story was what was happening inside the locker rooms, among the players. The conversations that weren't making it onto social media. The tensions building behind closed doors between veterans who felt overlooked and a rookie who had changed the entire financial reality of the league they'd sacrificed for. And once those conversations started leaking, everything was about to get so much messier. Everyone was watching the fouls. Nobody was watching the locker rooms. And that was exactly the problem. Let's be honest about something that the highlight packages and the Twitter threads never fully captured. The Caitlin Clark situation was never just about basketball. It was about money, attention, respect, and a league full of elite athletes who had spent years, some of them entire careers, fighting for recognition that never quite arrived at the scale they deserved. Then Clark arrived, and the recognition arrived with her. But here's the uncomfortable truth that started quietly circulating among players, agents, and league insiders. Not everyone felt like they were sharing in that recognition. Think about what the WNBA looked like before the 2024 draft. Players like Aya Wilson, a two-time MVP, a champion, one of the most dominant players the league had ever produced, were still fighting for mainstream visibility, still having conversations about fair pay, still watching a league they loved operate on budgets that felt insulting compared to their male counterparts. Breanna Stewart had dragged the New York Liberty to the finals, put up historic numbers, and was universally regarded as one of the best players on the planet. Still, casual sports fans outside women's basketball couldn't pick her out of the lineup. Sabrina Ionescu was dropping jaw-dropping performances in Madison Square Garden. Kelsey Plum was carrying franchises. Eriko Gunbowl was making impossible shots look routine. And the mainstream sports world was still only halfway paying attention. Then Clark's first game tipped off. And suddenly, overnight, the cameras were everywhere. Now imagine being a veteran in that league. You gave years to build this. You took the smaller paychecks. You played through the growing pains. You advocated and sacrificed and grinded. And the recognition you deserved never quite scaled the way it should have. And then a rookie walks in and gets, in her first season, what you spent a decade working toward. That doesn't make anyone a villain. It makes them human, but it does explain something. It explains the edge, the physical play, the comments in post-game pressers that felt pointed, the social media subtweets that stopped just short of saying the real thing out loud. It wasn't just about Caitlin Clark specifically. It was about everything Clark represented. The frustrating reality that it sometimes takes one particular story, one particular face, one particular moment to finally make the mainstream pay attention to something that was always worth watching. And that frustration had to go somewhere. On the court, it went into contact, and the contact kept escalating. What started as physical, aggressive play, the kind that exists in every professional sport, started developing a different texture. Fans with access to replay angles and slow motion clips began building cases. Specific players, specific moments, specific patterns of contact that seemed to follow Clark from city to city. The WNBA's response remained cautious, measured, diplomatic, And to a fan base already primed for outrage, Measure felt like complicit. Sports talk exploded. Not just WNBA-specific shows. Major ESPN platforms. NFL analysts weighing in. NBA stars being asked about it in pressers. The story had escaped the boundaries of women's basketball and become a full national sports conversation. And here's where the league's real panic began. Because for years, decades, honestly, the WNBA's biggest challenge had been getting people to care. Now people cared. Deeply, passionately, sometimes angrily. But the anger was threatening to overshadow the basketball. Every conversation about Clark's physical treatment was a conversation not being had about Aya Wilson's MVP case. Every viral foul clip crowded out highlights of Breanna Stewart doing something extraordinary. Every outrage cycle pulled attention away from Angel Reese's own remarkable rookie numbers, a player who, by any objective measure, was having a historic first season of her own. The irony was suffocating. The attention Clark brought to the league was simultaneously the best thing that had happened to women's basketball in years, and a consuming narrative that threatened to swallow everything else whole. League executives knew it. Veteran players knew it. Even Clark's own supporters, if they were being honest, could feel the weight of it. Something had to give. And then the fine structure announcement dropped. And the reaction told you everything you needed to know about where things stood. Players who had welcomed the new CBA, the unprecedented salary increases, the improved travel conditions, the benefits that finally reflected their professional status, suddenly found themselves looking at a revised punishment structure that felt pointed. $500 for a technical, up from $200. Flagrant foul fines increased. Repeat offender escalations built into the system. On paper, it was a modest adjustment. League fine structures are never dramatic numbers at the professional level, but the symbolism hit different because players understood and fans understood that this wasn't really about the dollar amounts. It was about the league drawing a line. And the question that immediately consumed social media, sports radio, and locker room conversations across every WNBA city was simple and devastating. Why did it take Caitlin Clark for the line to get drawn? Veterans who had absorbed physical play for years without this level of league response felt the sting of that question. Players who had never been accused of targeting anyone felt the sting of being part of a league-wide crackdown driven by one player's controversy. And Clark supporters felt the sting of knowing the protection came this late. Nobody walked away from that announcement feeling good. And that, right there, was the WNBA's real crisis. Not the fouls, not the fines, not the viral clips. The real crisis was a league caught between two groups of people it desperately needed, and failing, in that moment, to fully satisfy either one. But here's what changes everything. Because while the league was managing optics and fans were choosing sides, something was happening on the actual basketball court that nobody had fully predicted. The players at the center of this controversy, they weren't backing down. And neither was Clark. And what happened next, in the games, in the pressers, in the moments that cameras caught when nobody thought anyone was watching, was about to rewrite the entire narrative. Because the most powerful thing about this story was never the outrage. It was what happened after the outrage.